Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange. I am Blessing AJ. How was your weekend? It's a start of a new week and I'm glad that you are here watching Early Exchange. It gives me great joy to welcome you. I hope you have put things in place to assure of profit this week. Now, profit may not be money, it could be that goal of yours you set structure in place to ensure that they are actualized. AY is looking well rested and ready to dish out lots of goodness for you this morning. Good morning, Ayer.
A very good morning to you, Blessing. Good morning, viewers at home. Speaking about putting structures in place, Nigeria has put enough structures in place. Today, the ministers will take their oath of offices and they will assume duty fully. We've been getting ready for some days now, and it's a mix of celebration and getting fully set, excitement. Finally, Nigeria can set to the right path to progress in the agenda for the renewed agenda of President Bola Tinubu. So today they take oath of office, and apart from that, we will be looking at the insurance sector, the challenges, the prospects, where did we come from, and where are we going from here. These and many more are the matters to discuss today on Early Exchange. We're glad you're here. First and foremost, let us go to Ola Oluwawe in the news studio, where she is set to give us updates in the world of news. Good morning, Ola.
Yes, good morning, Ayo Jimmy. Good morning, Blessing Aiche, and good morning to you watching out there. I am Ola Oluwawe. Welcome to the morning news update. You know we are your compass through the events that shape our world. So join us as we delve into the news stories that will make the week an amazing one for us today. Stay tuned. Once again, welcome to the morning news update. Let's begin from Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has made changes to his cabinet, including the appointment of a new minister for Niger Delta Development, Engineer Abubakar Momo. He has been redeployed from the Ministry of Youth to the Ministry of Niger Delta Development. The Ministry of Youth will soon have a new minister designate. Other changes include the reshuffling of ministers in the Ministries of Transportation, Interior and Marine and Blue Economy. His Excellency Adigboyega Oyetola is now the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy. Honorable Bumi Tunji Ocho is the Minister of Interior, and Honorable Saidu Alkali is the Minister of Transportation. In addition, the two ministers of state in the oil and gas sector have been moved to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Senator Heineken Lukobiri is now the Minister of State Oil and Petroleum Resources, and Honorable Ekperikpe Ekpo is the Minister of State for Gas, Petroleum Resources. The President has also renamed the Ministry of Environment and Ecological Management as the Ministry of Environment. This information, which was revealed by the Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Njuring Gelale, added that these and many other minister designates have begun their documentation in Abuja yesterday and are to be sworn in today. Away from that, Qatar has begun the construction of 500,000 housing units in Kaduna State, Nigeria, as part of an effort to improve living conditions for families. The Mega Economic City project was inaugurated by Qatar's ambassador to Nigeria, Dr. Ali bin Ghanem Al-Hajri, who praised Governor Ubasani for his support in launching the Qatar Sanabil project. Kaduna State is a significant trade and transportation center with a diverse cultural heritage. Alongside the housing units, Qatar Charity has committed to providing other interventions and empowerment programs like scholarships, business equipment, and boreholes for underprivileged individuals in Kaduna. The inauguration ceremony happened at the Millennium City, Kaduna, where Governor Sani commended Qatar's involvement and highlighted the project's aim to provide modern and affordable housing, improve security, support local entrepreneurship, and facilitate international trade, as well as boost economic growth. And in order to protect citizens from the effects of the petrol subsidy removal, the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, has approved the distribution of 16 new luxurious buses to Saki, Iseyin, Ogbomoso, Oyo, and Ibarapa areas of the state. This brings the total number of buses under the Sustainable Action for Economic Recovery, SAFER, a 15-man member committee, to 46. A member of SAFER, who also doubles as the chairman of the subcommittee on transport services, Gafar Bello, reviewed this while paying an on-the-spot assessment to the Paysetters Transport Service, PTS, where the new buses were inspected before they were distributed to other zones of the state. It sought the support and cooperation of the people of the state for government in its commitment to helping to reduce poverty and the effect of petrol subsidy removal on the citizens on the state. And now to Osun State, where the governor, Senator Ademola Adeleke, has addressed the controversy surrounding the appointment of senior special assistant SSAs on Government House Pool and Oromiyo New Town, stating that the All Progressives Congress APC initiated these offices. The controversy emerged following the circulation of an August 9, 2023 memo appointing Oyetunji Rasaki Abefe as SSA to the governor on Government House Pool. In response, the governor's spokesperson, Olawale Rashid, explained that Government House Pool refers to the transport unit of the Government House responsible for managing drivers and vehicles, and the office has existed for around 12 years and was created by previous APC governments. The governor clarified that the appointment of an SSA for Oromiyo New Town also stems from the previous APC administration's establishment of a diaspora estate program involving a settlement called Oromiyo New Town. The newly appointed SSA's role involves ensuring the realization of government objectives in these areas and safeguarding the investment of diasporans. The governor's statement aims to counter misinterpretations of the appointment, asserting the necessity to manage public and private assets effectively and protect investments. Moving on, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, in a letter dated August 19 and signed by its Deputy Director, Kolawole Oluwadare, has asked President Bola Tinubu to publicly direct former governors now serving as ministers to stop collecting benefits that is due them from their states while serving as ministers. According to him, the appointment of former governors who collect life pensions while serving as ministers is forbidden by the Nigerian Constitution of 1999 as amended and Nigeria's legal obligations. Furthermore, citing a judgment by Justice Oluremi Oguntoyibo dated November 26, 2019, which indicated that double emoluments for governors are unacceptable, unconstitutional and illegal. Indeed, former governors collecting life pension while serving as ministers would result to taking advantage of public positions. Former governors who are now serving as ministers include Badaru Abubakar, Nyesom Wike, Bello Matawalle, Adigboyega Oyetola, David Umahi, Simon Lalong, Atiku Bagudu, and Ibrahim Gaidam. Away from that, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has, in a bid to improve the Nigerian foreign exchange market, asked broader exchange operators, that's BDCs, to provide a compulsory rendition of their statutory periodic reports daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly on the Financial Institution Form Rendition System, FIFX, which it said has been upgraded to meet individual operators' need. In a new operational mechanism contained in the circular dated August 17, the spread on the buying and selling by BDC operators will be within an allowable limits of -2.5% to +2.5% of the Nigerian foreign exchange market window weighted average rate of the previous days. The decision came 2 years after the CBN banned the sale of dollars to the BDCs in its effort to stabilize the market. The latest instruction, however, does not state whether the CBN would resume the sale of dollars to the BDCs, but it warns that non-rendition of returns would attract penalties, which may include withdrawal of operating license starting from the release date of the circular. Now let's take a breather and continue after the break. Don't go anywhere. Now, welcome back to the morning news update. I am Olaoluwa Awe. Thanks for staying tuned. Still in Africa, the Ghanaian government is considering doubling taxation and bilateral investment treaties to further improve its trade flow with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, as delegation from the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, GIPC, and the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, GEPA, met with their Trinidadian counterparts. The delegation from Ghana also identified some key sectors in Trinidad and Tobago, like its manufacturing, as an important area for collaboration with the Ghanaian small and medium enterprises, SMEs. According to a statement issued by the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of GIPC, Yofi Grant, the relationship will produce a beneficial outcome for both countries, considering their economic contributions and situations. Similarly, the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of GEPA, Afua Asebia Asari, commented on plans to establish a Trinidad and Tobago trade house that would showcase all Ghana has got to offer in terms of trade, culture, and more. And away from Africa to the Middle East, the United Arab Emirates Minister of State for Financial Affairs, Mohammed bin Hadi Al Husseini, together with the Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs for Health, led the UAE's team in the G20 Joint Health Finance Ministers meeting, JHFMM. During the meeting, the UAE's team started by acknowledging the progress made at the JHFMM this year and re-emphasized the need for the task force to consolidate on its achievement to enable effective collaboration between health and finance. Also, the UAE delegation mentioned the importance of the pandemic gaps and financial risk analysis that the JHFMM task force developed to capture each country's specific circumstances in their upcoming efforts. At the end of the meeting, all participating ministers made commitment to the task force's priorities and agreed to continue to promote health and finance coordination efforts on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Now to India, where a 40% export duty on onions will take effect immediately and last until the 31st of December 2023. The average wholesale onion prices in key markets has risen to almost 20% from July to August to $28.87 per 100 kilograms on the basis of the irregular rainfall, which will lead to lower yields. And India's onion export jumped 63% for the first half of 2023 from a year ago to 1.46 million metric tons. According to a statement by the Minister of Finance, Nirmala Sitharaman, this export duty will improve the domestic availability of onion. The minister hopes the move will reduce local prices ahead of state elections later this year and cause Asian buyers to pay more since other regional exporters have limited supplies. And away from India to the United Kingdom, the UK Health Security Agency, UKHSA, has reported the first case of the COVID-19 variant BA.286 in an individual without recent travel history. According to reports, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention revealed it was tracking the new highly changeable type of the virus that causes COVID. This type of virus has been found in Israel, Denmark, and the U.S. And in the U.S., the Biden administration is planning to recommend that all Americans receive a booster shot for the coronavirus during the fall to address a potential new wave of infections. A White House official revealed this information on Sunday, while the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDCs, have noted a rise in virus infections and hospital admissions. The overall infection rates are still relatively low. Moderna recently reported that initial data indicates its updated COVID-19 vaccine remain effective against the Aries and Phonax subvariant in humans. Other vaccine manufacturers such as Novavax, Pfizer, and BioNTech have also developed versions of their vaccines targeting the XBB.1.5 subvariant. These updated shots are anticipated to be available in the coming weeks for the autumn vaccination period, pending approval from health regulators in the United States and Europe. The administration intends to encourage all Americans to receive this booster shot, in addition to flu shots and shots for the respiratory syncytial virus RSV as part of their public health strategy. And away from the U.S., Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced the deployment of the military to address the rapidly spreading wildfires in British Columbia. The fires have prompted evacuation orders for over 35,000 individuals. British Columbia has declared a state of emergency and implemented a travel ban to accommodate evacuees and firefighters. Drone operators and others capturing fire-related imagery have been requested to stay clear of rescue operations. Although the situation has improved, West Kelowna Fire Chief Jason Brulland cautioned that challenges remain in containing the McDougall Creek fire. In a tweet, Justin Trudeau shared that the federal government's military support will include assistance with evacuations and logistics in response to a request from the British Columbia government. Canadian officials have urged residents under evacuation orders to leave promptly to save lives and prevent endangering firefighters. Remarkably, the Trans Mountain Pipeline and its expansion projects, which traverse British Columbia's interior to reach the Pacific coast, have remained unaffected by the fires, according to the pipeline's government-owned operator. And that's all there is on the morning news updates today. Check out our social media handles on the scroll bar and follow us for insightful analysis. I am Olaoluwa Awe. Back to the Early Exchange studio.
All right, it's time for us to do some news review as we begin with the swearing in of the ministers designated today to be an oath-taking ceremony for them. But some changes were made, last-minute changes to the portfolios of some of the ministers designate. The president had to do some reshuffling. We had Interior and the Ministries of Transportation, Interior and Marine and Blue Economy having some reshuffle. Digbu Igawi is now the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, while Honorable Bumi Tunjuju is the Minister of Interior and Honorable Seidu Akali is the Minister of Transportation. Well, to look at this, we have Idausa Usamanze, who is Director, Policy and Research, African Development Studies Center, ADSC, who this morning is looking so corporate from what he was looking on Friday. He said he was going to the gym, so I need to check with that if he actually went to the gym. You know, let's hold each other accountable to what we say regarding personal development. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Blessing. Aya, good morning.
Good morning.
I have done my gym.
Oh,
I have
okay.
dropped some kg.
Okay.
All right. Visual inspection actually shows that the emerging economy is experiencing some kind of depression today. It's fine. It's fine.
Good to know. So the changes that we've seen in the portfolios assigned to some of the ministers, a reshuffle. How do you see that?
Well, of course, it's part of the balancing efforts of government to ensure that all various social groups are taken care of, and all the vagaries of public affairs, especially in a multi-ethnic nation like Nigeria, where you have to put a lot of things into consideration before making announcements. And I think these balances are what are going on. And then, of course, a lot of agitation must have been going from the under, people are feeling that they are not being carried along. And then, of course, you have a president who will need to put his ear on the ground and to hear what the people are saying. And I think these are the things that may be happening at the back end of Aso Rock.
Okay. Some of us actually underestimate the challenges of presidency as an office in a multi-ethnic country like Nigeria. It is often being joked about that. If you compare and contrast the picture of a president before inauguration or before taking office and at the end of office, you might actually get to understand how much of pressure is on them now. See, things may not be as easy as they appear when it comes to selection of cabinet members. And the good thing is that they have not been sworn in. Even when they've been sworn in, if you think you still need to make some changes, if the law allows, you can still do that. Between last Friday and today, a lot of things might have happened in the background that warranted this. And it's good to know that the president is listening to the people and factoring in their sentiments, because sentiment is part of politics, no matter how we look at it. So
you see, yes. One of the issues that we train people, especially for those who are leaders and policy makers, you see, is also to be aware of emotions and blackmail. Yes, while you are being sensitive, a lot of people blackmail you. And even when you are doing something that may be really strategically right, and of course you are put in the court of public opinion and blackmail, and then you have to backtrack. If you watch the social media over the weekend, and you would have seen pictures of some people who are called the president boys in Jewish ministries.
Yeah, I agree with you. The ability to recognize blackmail rather than just agreeing to suggestions or sentiments, and ability to strike a balance, ensuring that we have round pegs in round holes. I think that's just it. But there's a development regarding the minister's designate, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, in a letter dated 19th August and signed by its Deputy Director, Kolawole Oluwadari, has asked President Tinubu to publicly direct former governors, now that will be serving as ministers, to stop collecting benefits that is due them from their state while serving as ministers. You know that we have this arrangement where governors and the deputies, once they exit office, somehow entitled to some benefit like retirement benefits and some packages. So this is what SERAP is disputing, that if they are now serving as ministers, or if they will be serving as ministers, then they should not have access to that, or that should not accrue to them, because it's like giving them too much, and they're collecting as serving ministers and also collecting some retirement benefits. What's your take on that, though, sir?
Well, I think one of the real tragedy that has happened to us as a nation over the years is that people come into office for 4 years, and then, of course, they are entitled to lifetime pension. For me, really, I think that's a travesty of justice. But I think people should just be honorable enough. We don't need the president to be putting pressure or SERAP to write. Gbenga Daniels had led with some very credible example. He personally wrote to Ogun State government that, look, now I am a senator, so stop my pension as governor. And I think honor demand that everybody should follow in that stead, especially when you look at what faces us, the challenge that we're all trying to grapple with. And people are talking about how to reduce the cost of governance. And I think the nation has been fair, the state has been fair to some of them. They should be able to reciprocate this, at least by lowering what they are draining from the state, so that the other poor people, like the president said, can begin to breathe well. Yeah.
Now, the question for me is that what applies to the goose should also apply to the gander. If you call this oversight, this never happens to those that are lower down in the cadre in the civil service. If you exit an office today, trust me, you won't get your the allowances of that office. There is automation of stoppage, so to speak, of your allowances. But when it gets to a particular level, some seem to be, above the law. within the constitution, they are not above the law, but at the point of execution, which is where we talk about political will, we don't have the political will to apply the law across board. Some are seen as sacred cows, and it is noteworthy that
it's not really like that. You see, because many of the states actually enacted laws to support this act.
So then what is the problem? Why do we need a seller to write for them to stop?
It's not illegal, because if you go across the state where this thing happens, the state assembly actually had enacted laws in the state that make this thing legal. It's not as if it's illegal. That's not what Serap is saying. But what Serap is saying, that morality demands that now you have a new office as an ex-governor, you can't be taking salary from your state, emolument from your state, and now you are taking emolument from the center. So you have to take emolument from where you currently work and allow your state to go. Because a lot of all these things are factored into law, because they wrote new legislations to give fillip to some of these behaviors that we see on the streets.
Well, let's hope that this issue gets resolved, because you know that when things like this happen, before you know it, you begin to get inputs regarding the issue from different quarters. And what Ayo was referring to is the structure that is put in place for regular civil servants. Once you exit, there is an automatic stoppage of
yeah, but these are not civil servants.
But there should be an automatic, because
Serap
actually cited that.
This is what they talk about, public service. You see, there are civil service structure, and there are rules and regulations that govern the civil service. They are in the law book. Now, these other sets of public servants, there are also rules and laws and regulations that governs them. Now, yes, of course, this is where, of course, there are issues of morality come in here. Because as you know, the way our politics is wired is that you have one man who becomes the governor, becomes so powerful, and have overtly control over the state legislature. We saw that even in those states where, of course, you find for a very long period of a particular regime, only 10 people out of 24 were in the State House Assembly. And these were the ones that were said to be very loyal to the governor. So you see governor having control over the legislature, so they can actually make laws to protect themselves. And this is what has been happening, because the legislature seems not to be very independent. And I think this is what we really need to begin to assert in a democracy, where the institutions become so strong that they can actually be checks and balances on the counterparts. So the chief executive have no control so much over the legislature, and they don't have so much control over the judiciary. But what we have seen in time past is that you are having that once you become a governor of the state, you become so powerful because you determine who become the lawmaker, and sometimes, of course, you also determine who become a judge, and these things all work in your favor. And so the real independence, which of course a federal arrangement should really portend for a people, is actually not there. And this is why you see they can run away with a whole lot of legislation. And so you just throw a bill there and everybody pass it. And then, of course, it becomes a law.
Well, maybe from the center we can address this at the from the constitutional angle, being a federal policy that has to be binding on all states. Because, hey, we're talking about a time where revenue is short. People cannot be, we have career politicians, as we've come to see in Nigeria. People move from being governors to become senators, to become ministers, and it goes on and on. So the payments cannot continue. You can't be receiving from all ends, where people are actually scratching at the lower cadre to survive. Away from that, to some developmental matters now. We've been talking about the digital economy. It seemed like some students have chosen to chart the course in this regard, talking about students of secondary school girls of the federal government's college, FGC, in Shagamu, Ogun State, where they have built an AI robot they called Okikiola Shagamu. Kiki Shaggy. Okay, the project involved 10 students of the school and a few staff members, and this project was recently unveiled by the permanent secretary of the Federal Ministry of Education. So the robot stands at a height of 6 feet, weighs 60 kg, and has a maximum speed of 10 kilometers per hour. So the AI robot, according to the student, is capable of talking, walking, and even gesticulating. Well, they didn't provide us with all the details of what the robot is capable of doing. So if the robot can talk, can walk, can gesticulate, what else? But very commendable is the fact that they were able to build this robot. They actually said that they've had several trials trying to make some AI robot, but they could not succeed to this point. This is the first success that they've achieved, and it's very, very impressive.
I am very excited.
I knew that even without
Very,
me calling you, you were going to speak, because that's from your state. So.
No. Let's be clear. It's not about the state. For me, it's about we as Nigerians doing it. This reminds me of JET Club, Junior Engineers, Technicians and Scientists of those days. And I was a JET Club member back then. I remember those competitions that we went for when we were bonded. I felt like I was a scientist going to the moon at some point. Really? Because we had the backing of our physics teacher and other science teachers. And we did some projects that never really saw the light of day. Now, one other thing, these are girls.
Yes.
Girls in tech. Now, we are beginning to play in the global scheme of things. If our secondary school students, under the guidance of their teachers, could do a robot that could walk, talk, and even gesticulate, that for me is amazing, and it's cause for celebration. And I think innovators at that level should be aggregated. There are pockets of innovators here and there, teenage innovators. We see them pop up in the news every now and then. But now, let us find a national arrangement where they can be aggregated and given special education. The intellect that led to robot creation by secondary school girls is not common. It's very rare. Let's put these rare breeds together and give them, some kind of leveling up. Touch them up, and they will go ahead and make us proud one of these days. That's just my point of it.
Yeah, just to say thank you to NITDA because of the collaborations they're doing with secondary schools and even some primary school to see how we can actually deepen our competence and capacity in the ICT world. And I think this is a very good news this morning, saying that, of course, we are having to see secondary school children doing this mighty feat. And then, of course, if it can be sustained until when they get to the university, I hope a lot will happen. And Nigeria, of course, will be able to actually draw from the new oil, which is ICT.
We hope so too, and a good one to the girls. Way to go. I like that they had resources to actually bring this to bear, because without the needed resources, this would have been just something in their minds that they wish they could actually do. So I think that going forward, all schools, all institutions of learning should be given the resources that they need, and we should have that synergy between the schools and the industries, so that where these brains are actually smart enough to come up with the ideas and even the abilities, they will have the needed resources that translate it into widespread development. We'll leave it here on the news review. We'll take a break, and now we'll begin to look at other issues. Insurance is the focus for today. They say man proposes, but God disposes. Well, people have also decided to do their own part by ensuring that there are structures in place to take care of some unforeseen circumstances. Are you one of them? Let's look at that after this break.
Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Souk News. Like Blessing announced before the break, we are taking a look today at insurance practice in Nigeria. Of course, we are not experts on insurance, but we are consumers of insurance as well. And that is where we start the conversation from as the consumers of insurance policies. A lot of us really don't see the need for insurance. When I say us, I don't mean us here. A lot of people in this part of the world don't see the need for insurance. When an insurance salesman walks up to you and says, hey, this is your car, you may need to insure it. What if it's stolen? Our first response is, over my dead body. It will not happen. But things happen. Houses get burnt. Cars get stolen. We all die at one point or the other. All of us will go and will leave some people behind. So the place of insurance cannot be overemphasized. It's a need. And I do tell those who are into the sales, insurance is one very tough service to market. How do you market to an African who believes no evil will befall him? Well, evil happens, we're not praying for it. So we're talking about that today. What's your experience like? It was hard selling insurance to me, to be sincere, because I had too many questions to ask, and thank God some of these boys and these insurance salespeople were able to meet my yearnings and convince me. For you, Blessing, how was it really?
Well,
were you really an easy, I will not call you a target, an easy customer for them, or you were one of the die-hard ones like me?
It depends on the insurance product that they were trying to sell. Now, for those who sold health insurance, it was an easy sell. For those who sold other kinds of insurance, maybe property insurance on certain kinds of property, it was also an easy sell. But the question was, what insurance company is this? How guaranteed am I that I would get payment of claims when the need arises? But the product that was not an easy sell until now, and they haven't been able to sell me, is assurance, life assurance. Because yes, you know that in this environment, we're very spiritual people. When you tell somebody, take up life assurance, so if anything happens to you, the person tells you, oh, it is not my portion to die, and then they begin to say all sorts of religious things. But the question is, whose portion is it? Because nobody actually wants to die, as people would say, or as we call it, prematurely. But sometimes some things may happen. And then there's also the part of, hey, so if I'm setting money aside, or if I'm paying premium to ensure that when something happens to my life or to the life of the policyholder, those the person leaves behind, next of kin or other family members are well taken care of. Well, the selfish part of the human nature comes into being. So you mean I'm just going to work and leave it to someone else to enjoy? These are some of the reasons why it's a hard sell for products like that when you talk about insurance. But like I mentioned, that the part of health insurance, because it becomes very, very helpful, particularly in this time and age where the cost of medical services keep increasing. So you just need that fallback, sort of. I don't know what experience of Idahosa is regarding this.
Well, earlier in the year, we had a retreat with the board of NACOM, the regulators, and one of the issues that was actually raised in that retreat was the fact that we are still underinsured. And some of the reason, just as you have articulated, flow from issues that had to do with religion, and a lot of people believe no bad thing will happen. Now, there's also an aspect of the economy of it, where some people feel that, of course, you have to pay premium annually, and really, in a year, you don't need to use the service. And this is also a very big problem for some people. And said, okay, I am contributing 10,000, for example, for health. And in a year, I don't fall sick. So what happened to my money? So which means I'm just dashing some people some money. Now, that's one aspect. And there's also another aspect to this triangle, which is, of course, the complexity in receiving claims when even the eventuality happens. And some people take on a health insurance, and you are told, okay, you have done health insurance, and by the time they get to the hospital, they say, oh, your insurance didn't cover this, and they don't have sufficient information. And this also discourages people to say, oh, if I'm paying this and this is what I get, I think I better deal with hospital directly. When I have a problem, I can get in there. But I think the real issues are issues that has to do with communication, how this industry is really being managed and communicated. A lot of people have their hands burnt, and you, of course, you think to have had a comprehensive insurance on a particular property, and then, of course, way into the life cycle of that particular property you insured, you discover that, oh, nothing has happened. And then you go to reduce your premium by yourself. And then the eventuality happens. And then you are going to claim. And you now discover that what you're claiming is actually not able to procure what you had insured in the first place. Because here is like penny wise, pound foolish. So these are the real issues. And I think that the insurance companies need to do a lot more of sensitization and communication of what the benefits are, what people stand to gain if they sustain their premium over time, and what happens if they decide to undervalue their property. Because if inflation goes up and the prices of goods in the market is going up, and you put your value at a certain level because you want to pay lower premium, chances are that when the eventuality happens, what you are going to get may not be sufficient for you to procure that, of course, which you actually insured. These are a lot of the vagaries that you find in the insurance industry that really makes participation still very, very low.
Yeah, honestly speaking, I think beyond the insurance companies trying to re-educate Nigerians, there's a place of, self-education. There's a place of self-reflection. Now, the real question for me is that what is the cost of taking premium on a particular property as against the cost of not taking it when eventualities happen? And a clear example comes to mind. A friend of mine just bought a car, maybe some years ago, like 5 years ago, and he took loan to buy it. It was a difficult thing to convince him to, take insurance policy on that car, even though it's normal thing to do. He did comprehensive. Now, and the premium was a bit high for him at that point. But 4 months into the purchase of that car, he crashed that car. The insurance company paid. Now, we're not having a conversation. What if you had not taken up this insurance?
Yeah.
Because for him, it was a gain. For some, they would have paid it for 3 years, even throughout the life cycle of that property, nothing happens.
Yeah,
but then, I guess this is where probability comes into play, which is what insurance companies, trade on. That, for me, was a critical turning point because I never really saw the need for it. I was, okay, let's just fulfill. As a matter of fact, some of us were taking insurance on cars because we will get stopped at some point and somebody will ask for your papers, insurance papers. But after that particular experience, I learned better. And I think it's critical for all of us to, imbibe that. This is for our own interest because what will happen will happen. How prepared you are to handle what happens is what matters. And that is what underscores insurance.
Yeah, the probability of something not happening when you take up the premium and you keep paying, maybe for business owners, you have a business somewhere and you're paying insurance, maybe for, in the case some disaster happens and nothing happens 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I think it pays you more if you keep paying that, in my view. Because what if something actually happens? Look at the way sometimes we get to hear of fire outbreak at markets, at shopping malls, and goods worth millions of naira just go down like that, and people begin to appeal for governments to come to their aid. Just what if some of these business owners had their goods insured and something like that happened? But another issue that we have sometimes is the assessment of the value of the business at the end of the day, because we have issues sometimes with pricing and then even with inventory, because sometimes how do people really get to take the exact inventory of goods that they had before that situation happened, even when they were paying claims and all of that. So sometimes what discourages people is not even the fact that, oh, I keep paying and nothing happens, is the bottleneck that's the experience trying to get the payment of claims. It's not as easy when you're paying premiums as it is trying to get the claims when the eventuality actually happens. So I think that's one thing that a lot of insurance companies need to work on, because you see these things, it took you to have actually witnessed what happened with your friend, how easy it was for him to get a settlement after something happened, a damage happened to the car. Now, if people see that for other business people or for other people, payment of claims comes seamlessly, comes easy, without any hassle, it will encourage a lot of persons to key into the process.
Yeah, but that's why I spoke about the value of communication and information in the public domain. Like they always say, if you want to hide something from a black man, write it in a book. Why is the bottleneck in terms of claim happening is because many times we don't pay any close attention to the contract on the insurance. You see, the policy that you are given, the details on how claim can be done and made real is there on the document. But not many people take the pain to read the policy, what it allows and what it does not allow, what you can get and what you cannot get. So what you just say, somebody 6 months sells to you, so you just insure your car in case anything happens, a company will pay you. And of course you like it and you put your pen to the paper without reading the details and the condition for claims. Now this is a real problem, and this is why it is important for insurance company to actually engage with the public so that when policies are being sold, the generality of the public, they hear better than they will read from the policy statement, because they are not looking at those paper. Take, for example, the third-party insurance. You know, many people don't see the value. And that's why a lot of people take the fake.
The fake.
Yes.
Now, when, of course, the regulatory body decide to allow for the increment of the third-party insurance to 15,000 naira, nobody in the consuming public were really educated on what was the benefit that came with the 15,000 insurance package. It was in the retreat we had earlier in the year that I came to know that, of course, when this accident happened, and of course it's on a third party, that the claim was from 3 million, and because this thing has been moved to 15,000 naira, the claim now has moved from 3 million to about 9 million. You know, but we really don't take advantage of it, the third-party insurance. So it happens, and people don't really, because they just feel that it is a way of empowering the insurance company alone, but without really understanding that there's some also liabilities that the insurance company will need to pay. So the public are not aware. They say, oh, why would government be collecting 5,000, 15,000 from 1,000 to 5,000? Now they are collecting 5. Government is just looking for a way to collect money without really understanding the logic around the increment in terms of these policies. So this is what the public need to know. So the insurance company need to be in the face of the people to educate people to say, this is what you stand to gain if you do this. Because when you look at those Western countries where a lot of things seems working, the real backbone is the insurance policies in those countries.
I wouldn't want to think that sometimes it's a deliberate attempt not to educate people on these things. But sometimes it appears to be that way, because when people do not know what they have, they won't come for claims. A lot of persons have actually just done the third-party insurance to have the paper to have so they can move their vehicle on the road without any authority stopping them. Yes. And so when they do not know they pay this insurance, who would come for claims? If anything happened to the vehicle, I'm very sure that a lot of persons would not even think about going to apply for claims of the insurance or what is accrued to them, because they do not even know. They just see it as, well, they say I should have
like it also
so
said,
they have it.
Communication is key, essentially. Communication is key, and a lot of people don't even get to understand what insurance is all about. But there now comes the place of insurance brokers, because you spoke earlier about not being able to read in between the lines of those fine prints. They call them fine prints of insurance. Not many of us have the patience to read, but this is where brokers come into play. Some will ask you, why do I need to still engage the service of an insurance broker? Well, to read those fine prints that you are not able to read, or that you are not educated enough to understand, and they read for you on your behalf. And when there is any incidents or any accident, as the case may be, your broker stands between you and the insurance company to ensure that you don't go through as much stress as you should go through if you do it by yourself or alone. And this is where they play.
Mayo, let me ask you, why does the language have to be so complex? Why would it necessarily need interpretation?
Can I answer that?
I wanted to give you an example.
Okay.
You see, there's a whole lot of complexity in the entire system.
Yes, essentially.
Some years ago, in my church, we did a comprehensive insurance for our generator. And because the entire church properties were all insured. And something happened. The armature of the generator was taking one money during the rain. And we wanted a claim because I was the brain of the generator. Then I called the broker who came to do the brokerage and I said, look, our generator has been tampered. We want insurance. And he said, well, your comprehensive did not cover that. And I said, but he didn't tell us. We actually use the service of a broker.
Oh, even at that?
Yes, that's what I'm saying to you. See, because a lot of the brokers are more interested in their brokerage than they are on the workability of the insurance company. So what for me it is that, number one, the regulator needs to speak up because it's critical to development, that particular sector. And that's why you see during the COVID-19 pandemic, many of the Western countries had to invest heavily because a lot of insurance companies were greatly affected. And government knew that if this company go under, it will be very difficult to manage the multiplicity of the challenges in society. So they have to intervene and give money to insurance companies to be able to meet up with the claims that were coming to them. But I think the regulators here need to really grow this industry because it's critical to our success. Now, most of the things that we are taking for granted, if they are properly insured, life will be better. You see, you won't be talking about people having health. You know, the last time we were talking here on this show, state government can even decide to insure health insurance for the vulnerable in society rather than giving them pittance and pay it for them as premium so that when they are sick and they need just basic care to see a doctor, it will not become a Herculean tax, and then we can actually meet some basic needs without really having to put too much of energy into it.
Well, the National Insurance Commission, NICOM, is actually responsible for regulating the insurance sector. So they have, as part of the objective, to protect policyholders, promote the orderly development of the insurance industry, ensure the solvency of insurance companies, which is what you just talked about, because sometimes it even seems like some insurance companies are not solvent enough to take care of the claims as they come. So these are some of the issues. But regarding protecting the interests of the policyholders, I think that the NICOM should do more sensitization and should compel the insurance companies to explain in simple terms every policy that the policyholders want to take on. It should not be something so complex. I shouldn't need a legal practitioner. I shouldn't even need a broker to explain to me clearly what this means if the intent is not to take advantage of people.
Okay, I don't want to believe the intent is to take advantage of people. Every discipline has its own registers that must be used when you're communicating. And there is a limit to which you can simplify registers. Claim is claim. Premium is premium. Of course, you can explain in a layman's language, but when it comes to public education, I agree with you. And that is where people like us come into the play, to educate the public in the language they can understand. But when it comes to the fine print of insurance, there are terms that you must keep intact. You cannot dissolve the integrity of those terminologies.
Agreed.
And this is where the place of expertise comes in.
Agreed, but even at that, you should be able to explain the extent of coverage, because that is one key area. People take up insurance thinking that it covers a lot of things, but when it comes to requesting for payment of claims, that is the point they get to understand, oh, this is the extent of your coverage. It is not beyond there. It doesn't cover. For instance, take health insurance. Someone takes up a policy regarding that, thinking, oh, maybe if I have this ailment, it covers me for that. And at the point you get to the hospital, you're told, no, it is just basic treatment that it covers.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's clearly communicated. if you see the package, it's given in packages. They tell you, if you pay this premium, this is what you get. If you pay X premium, this is what you get. If you pay this premium, this is what you get. It's tabulated. And it comes with different premium. But you see the problem, and that's what I'm talking about, penny wise, pound foolish. So at the point of making that choice, you want the least risky option, hoping that something might not likely happen. But then, of course, you get into trouble and you see the unexpected happen. And then you are now looking as if you could do more. I have seen situations where people delay their premium. Because if you don't renew your premium, you have cancelled the policy. And they delay the premium. The following day, accident happened. And they are trying to pay the premium. You see, this is where, for me, the public enlightenment is what is critical. So that people should know what risks are involved. That if you don't pay your premium or renew your premium,
You've cancelled the policy.
you have cancelled the policy.
Wow.
And if accident happened the day after, even if you are paying the premium there, it will no longer be effective.
I would have loved to
Because it has
ask
been
you,
cancelled.
I would have asked you if you were a regular insurance practitioner, that what is the window of opportunity? Because, okay, what if the person is broke at the moment? Do you have a grace of maybe 1 month, but I don't know if you can answer that, because it's new to me that once you don't pay at a particular time,
Cancel, yeah.
what if I now pay before the accident happens?
That's what he just talked about.
That's what
That
I'm
because
saying.
there was a delay,
Once there's delay,
with the payment,
you have
it
cancelled
cancels
your
it.
contract with the company. So what you need to do is to be conscious that you renew your premium as and when due, because that's when there's a valid contract that you can actually make a claim on.
This is where automation comes in. Automation should...
aspect of it that should be communicated to people in Clinton,
Yes.
because you could just even be doing yourself a lot of wrong without you knowing. So you should know the terms on which the policy works. So you know not to break it. You know to comply with your own part.
I think
then,
you spoke about the automation. It's very critical.
Because
Because you see, if you look at Lagos, for example, now, in terms of vehicle registration, once your insurance policy is about to expire,
There's a
what
reminder.
happens? They send you a text message
Yes.
on your telephone and tell you your policy is getting ended on this date, renew. And if you don't renew, sometimes, as somebody told me about last weekend, you see, fine even come to tell you that they have sent you a fine because you are driving without insurance.
I never knew insurance affects us this much, but the heat of our passion, the intensity of the passion with which this was discussed showed me that clearly insurance has a role, a key to play in our lives as individuals. And let's just take a cue from that. We're not done with insurance yet. Let's just go on a very short break. And when we come back, we will continue with the discussion, maybe on another level entirely. Don't go away.
Many thanks for being there. We're still looking at insurance practice in Africa. Yes, some of the reasons why some Africans do not see the need to take up insurance. Well, we still have Idausa Osamanze, who is Director, Research and Policy, African Development Studies Center. Now, because African Development Studies Center is a research firm, there's also a firm that trains institutions as well as individuals on how to improve their capacity. So trainings have also been done in the course of your duty. So you have also trained people from NICOM. So in the course of that training, what did you come to see? What was the revelation about the agency that is in charge of regulating trainings, regulating insurance in Nigeria, and what is a takeout for you?
Yeah, but I think I've mentioned that earlier on in the conversation. One of the things was the fact that the regulators are doing so much. And speaking with the board of NICOM, we discovered that there were actually also some areas where punitive actions were actually taken against some insurance companies based on the infractions which we've been talking about here. But the unfortunate thing is that the public are not aware. And this is where the real issues are. Now, you see, a lot of people will gain confidence to do insurance if they are aware that when companies are found wanting, that the regulator can actually bite, that they can actually protect policyholders. But this is not in the public domain. This conversation happened between the insurance companies and the regulator. But the general public, they don't come to really know what the regulator are up to and what they are doing. And so what we really advised in that retreat was the fact that they need to speak to the people more, because it is good for the industry. If you're not talking to the people to see that, okay, some people have become scapegoat for cutting corners, and then this gives confidence to policy or potential policy holders to say, I want to enroll in a policy. This was the take. They're doing so much, but it's really not about putting the right policy framework in place, but it's about communicating what you are doing and let people see what you're doing. Let it be very obvious to people that this is the position of regulators. And once we can get that done, you will see that we're going to get more results. And then, of course, the insurance industry become more prosperous. The potential policy buyer become more confident in the system, and then we have a very robust industry.
All right, we have joining us via Zoom Temilade Olokpade, the Deputy Compliance Manager, Lasako Assurance PLC. Good morning, Temilade.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Early Exchange today. So we're looking at the regulation of insurance practice in Nigeria and maybe by extension in Africa. Now, let's start. Why is regulation at this point in our insurance practice necessary to start with? Because we're not new in insurance in Nigeria here. Why do we need to step up regulations at this point in our country?
Okay, so majorly, at the crux of it all is the consumer's protection, at the crux of it all. And insurance really is giving you a guarantee that for any loss you are covered. But at the crux of it is the consumer's protection. The consumers are protected against perpetration of any insurance company, and particularly to adequately protect the public interest.
All right, now, so how does the current regulatory framework ensure transparency in the sector?
Okay, so we have quite a number of regulatory frameworks, one of which is the introduction of the NICOM portal, which sees your production real time. It helps to ensure the genuineness of policies. It can assign IG to policies, and so you can regulators can see at a glance that it is the same products being offered by various insurance companies.
Okay, let's look at the challenges of regulating insurance practice in Nigeria. It has not been very easy for NICOM, so we learned. But what are the peculiar challenges that regulating the practice faces in Nigeria?
Okay, so I would say the regulatory complexity. It's also the insurance costs, in increased enforcement, and sometimes inconsistent enforcement. So for compliance costs, while the big insurance companies can afford it, the ones coming up might not be able to afford it. And then the complexity in regulations, the changes in regulation, the climate changes, some of these things are keeping abreast with the various innovations of the regulators. And sometimes the tools needed to keep abreast and keep in compliance with these regulations are not provided.
All right, in terms of consumer protection, what structure is in place to ensure that the policyholder have access to accurate information so they are well aware of whatever products they are taking, the terms that goes with it, in terms of the premium they pay, the extent of coverage, and the process to payment of claims?
Okay, so aside NICOM, we have other supervisory bodies. We have the ARIAN, the NCRIP, the CIN. Our customers can always get this information online. Particularly, I spoke earlier about the NICOM portal. Consumers are permitted to log in and view those products. They are permitted to log in and decide the insurance company they want to go with. But then the regulators have ensured that these products are the same everywhere. The peculiarities of each product embedded in each product are the same. So because of the regulation, you cannot find a different thing in two various insurance companies. But particularly, there's the NICOM complaints portal that was created primarily for the consumers. So if a consumer has a question, complaints, grievances, they can take it up with our regulators directly.
Okay, now, speaking about the NICOM complaints portal, how accessible is this portal, number one? And what is the speed of response of NICOM when consumers go there to lodge complaints, from your experience?
Okay, the portal is accessible to all. It's accessible to even persons that do not have insurance with us, or probably beneficiaries of an insurance claim. We can accept it. Everybody, it's accessible to all. However, the turnaround time, I might not be able to speak to that because I don't work with regulators. But I know that the beauty of the portal is while the complainant is lodging his complaints, the insurance company can also see the complaint being lodged against them. And so resolutions are already put in place.
Now, are there regulations regarding sensitization, creating awareness of how the insurance industry works, or how insurance works, and whose responsibility is it to carry out these awareness campaign or sensitization?
Okay, so like I said, aside NICOM, we have the ARIAN, which is the Association of Insurance Agents. We have the NCRIP, Association of Insurance Brokers. We have the CIN, but particularly the insurance companies themselves periodically um, write-ups about their periodically train the insurance companies on how and the peculiarities of whatever guidelines they've released.
Okay, now,
Hello?
yes, we can hear you. So one of the complaints of consumers is that there is no transparency, so to speak, in insurance practice for policyholders. We spoke earlier about not being able to read the fine print of insurance. What frameworks are put in place to ensure that there is transparency at every stage along the insurance value chain supply? What are the frameworks put in place to ensure transparency of insurance practitioners as they go about their duties?
Okay, transparency. Like I said, with the NICOM portal, the regulators can see on a real-time basis
Okay.
how the businesses is being run. But particularly for the consumers and the policyholders, is like I explained earlier, the complaints portal, but even the NICOM portal is free to all. There are ways where you can log in as the insurance company and log in as a consumer. So, like I said, you can see real time the peculiarities embedded in each product offered and the variance that might be between one complaint to another complaint.
Are there challenges in the industry that perhaps the regulatory framework does not accommodate? What would you propose?
Okay, one of the challenges would be the low penetration of insurance in the country generally. And I would say this deserves to be decided at the top. And until our government understands the essence of insurance, we will continue going around in circles, really. The middleman or the high class are the ones benefiting from insurance. But what happens to the grassroots? These are the ones that actually need this insurance. So the penetration and the fact that over time, insurance, people have lost trust in insurance. So I don't know how our regulator can come about bringing about penetration of insurance to the society.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the use of technology, even to monitor compliance. You mentioned the fact that there is this NICOM portal. I wanted to ask you then, is it that all the steps of insurance policy taking and execution have been digitized? Because you said that NICOM can actually measure or monitor real time what is going on. Have you digitized every step for you to say, okay, yes, we can monitor from our end here?
But the truth is, we're getting there. The insurance company is not as robust as the bank
Okay.
industry, but we're getting there.
All right, let's talk about solvency. Now, part of the regulatory framework is to ensure that all insurance companies must maintain a minimum level of solvency. Are we actually seeing that? And would you like to speak to the threshold? What is the minimum level of solvency for each insurance company in Nigeria?
Excuse me. So it depends on the type of insurance you offer. For those offering life insurances only, they moved from 2 million to 4 million, if I'm correct. And then for those offering general insurances, they moved from 4 to 8 billion. And then for those that offer the composite insurance, they moved from 8 to 15 thereabouts. I really can't speak. I can't be accurate on the amounts at this point, but the essence of the solvency was to ensure that the strength of each insurance company was also to ensure the stability of the insurance being offered. It's also to protect, like I said, at the crux of it all is the consumer's protection. So to ensure that insurance companies do not go under, there's still a capital that can protect the consumer's policy, the policyholders' funds. Hence why the capitalization or the capital adequacy was introduced. And it helps the insurance companies to know their strength. It helps them to perhaps focus on their strengths. It helps them to, okay, we might not be able to continue doing composite, we might need to only offer general businesses. Or yes, we can do composites and we have the capacity to do so.
Okay. Okay, now, earlier in your submission, you mentioned the fact that one basic challenge of regulation is the cost of compliance, and some new entrants into the field may not be able to afford the cost of compliance. I would have thought that the cost should be graded upward. There should be a minimum entry, cost requirement for new entrants, while the other ones that have gained some traction in the industry are able to do it at a level. Is there no such gradation of the cost of compliance, or is just one cost fits all for every practitioner?
I would say it's one cost fits all.
Wow.
But about the threshold or the minimum, that's to be decided by the regulators.
Okay.
Okay, in the payment of claims, in trying to comply with that claims are paid for certain kinds of insurance, do you encounter any, or the insurance companies encounter any challenge in actually trying to assess the value of whatever property that was insured? Take, for instance, let's say someone who's a farmer insures a farm. I don't know if we have such kind of insurance that insures such in Nigeria. But at the time something goes wrong, maybe a disaster happens, do you have issues with that, assessing the value of the farm so that payment of claims can be made as it went due?
Oh, okay. So insurance is way more robust than you're thinking. At the inception of business transactions, we inspect. We have assessors that does this inspection for us. At the point of claims too, we inspect the extent of damage and the you're particular about the insurances that were covered, the peculiarities of the insurance. The truth is, you and I can both take third-party motor insurance, but the peculiarities of both insurance can differ. So yes, we insure claims, but the claims payments will be based on the hazards that were covered at the inception of business transaction.
Okay, so let's look at the processes of getting claims.
And of course, we have the use of loss assessors that affect the extent of damage.
All right. So the processes of getting claims, because most of the policy holders, I mean insurance policy holders here, don't really understand how to go about, getting their claims. And we just spoke earlier before you joined on the need for us to educate the masses and communicate how insurance works. Could you please speak to some of the processes of getting claims in case of eventuality?
Okay, so claims procedure is at the point of damage or loss, you must notify your insurance company immediately. You must be able to speak to the extent of damage. It depends on the type of insurance that was taken. And then it depends if it's something that the insurance company themselves can assess, or they may need to call in a loss assessor or a loss adjuster, the case may be. Particularly once you've notified your insurance company of a loss or a damage, and then they ensure that this damage was actually covered, and then they move on to you providing evidence of the damage, you providing evidence that it actually was an insurance you are taking out on. I mean, using the agriculture she mentioned earlier, if a farmer were to approach us and we gave him agriculture insurance, if the insurance was just to cover the cost of crops, and then drought came in and that drought was not covered, we wouldn't pay. Really, but the process of insurance claim is you notify immediately a claim occurs or a damage occurs, and we determine if that claim was covered at inception. And I assure you, the insurances of those days are no longer what they have today. Claims remissions are done within 2-3 days, max. Depends on how quick the policyholder or the claimant, in this case, is able to provide information necessary for assessing the claim.
What are the new trends in the insurance sector, and do we have the framework that catches up with that trend to ensure that it is in line with the new trends?
Okay, so new trends, future trends, I would say has to do with digitalization, digital transformation, climate change, inflation. I will speak to inflation in that. So I know that inflation has affected a lot of industries, but particularly how it affects insurance. Insurance brings about economic growth, but where the masses can no longer afford to use insurance, it's going to affect the bottom line of the GDP. It's going to affect the layman that is not sure of what the future holds and cannot afford the insurance to cover what the future holds. I want to talk about digital transformation. We all know that we are moving towards digitalization of processes. So is the insurance industry of today ready to move or ready to be at par with other industries in the country?
Okay. So this particular question is one that has bothered a lot of people. My understanding of insurance compensation, or let's say compensation for now, is that insurance restores your property to the original state at which it was insured rather. So, meaning if I insure a car at the value of 1.5 million naira, if theft happens or damage or whatever, insurance is meant to restore my car to that 1.5 million naira state. Let us assume I've paid premiums for like maybe 5 years, 10 years, nothing happened to it, and you still want to restore my car to the initial state. What happens if that 1.5 million cannot take care of the need of my car at that point in time? Who takes care of the gap there?
Okay, so if, like you have explained, the insurance has been on for 10 years, there has been no claim over the years. There's what we call the no claims discount. You get that. But note that the value at that time, 10 years ago, is not the same 10 years after. But however, there's room for you over the number of years to have increased the premium and the capacity. So if you started with 1.5 10 years ago, it is expected that over the years, if you feel the value is increasing, you increase the value of the insurance.
All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, and I also spoke about no claims discount. So if for 10 years consecutively you've had to pay insurance premium and you've not had a claim for 10 years, you still get your no claims discounts, depending on the type of insurance you take and the complaint involved. All
right, in communicating the terms of an insurance policy to the policy holder, let's look at the third-party insurance, for instance. A lot of car owners or some car owners just take this up as trying to fulfill all the requirements of the necessary papers they must have to move their vehicles on the road. Now, if over a period of time it is observed that a number of people who have taken up that insurance after so many years do not even file for claims, does that suggest that nothing has happened to their vehicle, or they've not had the need, or they do not even know that perhaps they were supposed to file for claims when something happens, and opens up the conversation of lack of understanding of the policy that they've had? So who now has the responsibility of communicating to the policyholder to ensure that they are completely aware of the benefits of the policy they've taken on?
Oh, believe me, there's no one as of today that I know of or I've heard of that does not understand the benefits of insurance, except the grassroots, like I earlier mentioned. But then anyone taking up a third-party insurance today is just securing the future, the unknown of what happens. Let me secure the uncertainty that I might have an accident, or there might be a theft, there might be fire, anything could happen to the car. But that they are not claiming is probably most likely because they don't have claims. But for those that have claims and they don't come to claim, yes, I would agree that they are not well informed. But that information is, sometimes it's been said that information is in the books. Do you read it is the question. So when they take out insurance with us, all the things are taken out. They are written down in their policy documents. If they do not read and understand it, they expect to also contact us and ask questions. But particularly the penetration, like I said, it belongs to the regulators, not we, the practices. Okay. Do you understand? So we assume, or it is expected, that anybody that takes out an insurance should know the benefits of taking out such insurances. And I want to comment on the fact that our regulators are actually making some insurances compulsory, because the truth is, before now, a lot of vehicles are on the road and they don't have the simple third-party insurances on them, much less talk about comprehensive insurance. Okay. Do you understand? So I applaud the regulators for ensuring some compulsory insurances are put in place.
All right, so from the point of compliance, let's look at 5 years from now. Where do you see insurance regulation with respect to the level of compliance and playing the game faithfully on the part of practitioners? 5 years projection from now, where do you see insurance compliance to regulation?
I really have high hopes for insurance. compliance aspect. I would say that with the recent innovations of our regulators, where they can see us real time, they have released several circulars and guidelines to. There are recent guidelines as earlier 2022. I would say that 5 years from now, the insurance industry will be well structured, where there will be no variations from one insurance company to another. So yes, I have high hopes for insurance.
All right, now let's look at the role of the policyholder. Are there infractions that a policyholder can commit while taking up certain insurance policy? Just educate on them.
Yes, of course. So, like I said, each insurance is different. It depends on the kind of insurance you take out. But then there are some caveats that have been put in place. So if you're expect that, okay, let me use a third-party insurance, motor third-party insurance. So if you told us that you're using this car for Uber, for instance, and then strictly for probably carrying the passengers, or you have said that it is for transport of goods, and it is from within so location. So if you come to us and then you tell us that a claim occurred or a damage occurs outside of the location you had earlier advised us, we will not honor such claims. We won't, because you yourself have not honored the terms of the agreement.
Okay.
What about in payment? What about in payment of premiums? What is the window with which you should renew your premiums? And what happens when you don't renew within that window?
Oh, well, there's an extra 30 days grace, and then it also is at the discretion of the insurance company. So if I have a client that's been with me for over 10 years and has been consistent in payment of this premium, if probably at the 11th year it wasn't consistent, I can give him a number of days grace to make such payments, after which I'm not obliged to cover him. So if it's taken out, if it comes after the days of grace, the insurance will be starting afresh. A new period of cover will be issued.
Okay. On a very last note, let me ask you, are there compliance gaps on the part of practitioners, and how should NICOM address these gaps?
Okay, so some of the gaps would be, I said earlier, constant change in regulations. So it can really be strenuous keeping abreast with trends in the regulation. It's sometimes guidelines are released, and while you're still trying and struggling to understand those guidelines, more guidelines are coming up. The regulators are not explaining from what they expect of you, and so you start seeing different interpretation of guidelines. So yes, I would say that that's one major challenge of compliance. And really, our regulators need to do better when they release guidelines or directives. They should explain or call for trainings, as the case may be, so we understand where they're coming from or where they're going.
All right, thank you very much for letting us know, Temilade Olopade, the different angles when it comes to regulation. So the insurance companies themselves have to comply with the regulatory framework, and also
Yes,
the policyholder have their roles to play to ensure that it's a smooth operation.
Yes.
We appreciate your time with us today on Early Exchange.
Thank you, too.
All right, this is where we wrap up the discussion. We'll go on the break. We're not done with insurance, but we'll look at another aspect of insurance practice in Nigeria. Stay tuned.
thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Soap News. We've actually started the conversation on insurance and we're still on it. Now we come to Africa, the peculiar challenges of insurance in Africa, because though insurance is universal, experiences are peculiar. And in Africa, we have our own unique issues, just as other parts of the world have their own unique issues with insurance. Like one of the issues with insurance in Africa, as enumerated earlier on the show, is the low penetration of insurance. The rate of take-up of insurance policies is extremely low as compared to some other parts of the world where the masses are better informed and better educated to take up insurance policies. And apart from that, there is the talk of uninsurable risks. Africa is sadly still plagued by a lot of political unrests. There are pockets of political instability here and there. Just a couple of weeks ago, the military took over the governance in Niger Republic, and whatever gains have been made in some sectors have been wiped by that particular incident alone. So how do you ensure a community where you're not really guaranteed of how stable the political climate can be? This is just one of the many challenges of insurance in Africa. And of course, the issue of, infrastructure. How well equipped are we from the points of infrastructure to even deliver on insurance promises to policyholders? These and many more are the legs we'll take a look at in this particular segment of the program. Blessing.
Yes, and another issue is access to rural areas, because when we talk about insurance, sometimes the focus is on those in urban areas, those who have businesses or people in urban areas. But those in the rural areas, there are people too, and there are businesses that run in the rural areas. What is the level of access to those areas, and what is the level of penetration? How easy is it for those in the rural areas to understand the need for insurance policies? I think one basic issue is education, because if you're not educated enough, I do not mean the ability to actually read and write, but to know the importance of these things, then it becomes a hard sell to such a person. So that's part of the things that we'll be looking, or those are part of the things that we'll be looking at today. How can insurance companies navigate this areas as it regards challenges to the viability of insurance firms in Africa? So another thing is the limited availability of data. You know that having the exact data of certain areas in Africa is a challenge, maybe because we have not synchronized our database to let us know maybe the population in a certain area, the number of businesses, the nature of the businesses, to help insurance firms actually design products that would be needed in certain areas. For instance, technology. Yes, there is technology now in use in Africa, but how much of that technology have we developed, or have the insurance companies developed to enable them adopt products that will help people? For instance, studying the behavioral patterns of certain consumers, the kind of things that they do to present them what they need. Because what we find is like a hand down of what is being sold in other climes, when we have our own peculiarities here. Now, when we're talking about regulation, I gave the instance of the farm, a farmer wanting to insure his farm. How do you quantify the worth of the farm? How do you assess when there are losses to know the extent of claims or the extent of damage that can be covered? And you also talked about political instability, citing the case of Niger. Now, these are some of the peculiarities that we have in Africa. Natural disasters. What happens when people in those areas, their businesses or their property are affected by those things? Cultural issues too that deters people from taking up insurance, and having maybe some form of mandatory insurance that breaks those barriers. These are some of the challenges that Africa deals with when it comes to insurance.
Yeah, the good thing is that there is abundance of literature on how some of these challenges can be tackled, bearing in mind the peculiarity of the African, nature. For instance, when we talk about the uninsurable, risks, the experts will talk about risk pooling. Yes, we know that we cannot guarantee that there will be stability politically in this part of Africa, but then we can pool likely risks together. If this happens, then we can extend the liability to a particular sphere of operation. That is one. Then in the area of low insurance penetration, of course, it has been said that there could be, apart from the fact that we as media practitioners owe the public a duty to educate them, and insurance brokers or insurance practitioners also should educate their masses. Then there is the place of micro insurance as well, where you are able to develop affordable and simplified micro insurance products tailored to the needs of low income populations. In this particular
that is very
regard,
key.
yes,
Very
in this
key.
regard, there are companies that are targeting even the poor farmers, and you hear things like farmers are paying premiums as low as 1,000 naira per week to enjoy insurance cover over some of their, farms and farm produce, which is key, like you tried to say earlier.
Yeah, it's very key because one of the issues that Africa deals with is poverty. Now, as much as we have talked about wealth creation last week, but we cannot roll that out as a challenge. And we have a lot of low-income earners, and that is a challenge because when people think about how little they earn, now talking about insurance, it seems like a luxury to them because when they pull that out of what they earn, it seems like, oh, there's nothing much left. So some resign to fate and say, well, I'll just see what goes with my luck. And it's sometimes happened that there are no eventualities and so nothing happens to their happen to their property. But when you have product designed for this category of persons, it affords them the chance and the resource to also take on such policy. That's what I was also referring to when I talked about data. Now, using data to know how much of people you have in a particular area, what is their income, what is their the nature of the business or the source of livelihood that they have, and adapting a product to fit into those areas. So these are some of the ways I think that insurance companies can actually mitigate the challenges that they encounter with low penetration, expand the net so that you can have more persons pull into it and not just us having a product that's as you would have for every other person because we're a peculiar people.
Expansion of the net is very key because if we are saying not many people are, insured, if we're saying that penetration is, low, then we should look at some other means of, expanding the net so that we can have more people. Now, one area where we can do that is, use, technology. Okay, we have with us also, let me just not forget to introduce him. We have Sam Orowoje, who is a director, policy research and development for Femi Wash Limited, owners of Souk News, and of course, Wash Radio. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Yes, you look very insured and assured of the future. So we've been talking about the peculiar challenges of, insurance in Africa, and I know that there are policy issues around this. Earlier on, we spoke about regulations. It also mentioned the fact that the major challenge is that the regulators, though they are doing a lot, they are not communicating, enough to the beneficiaries or the would-be policy uptakers in this part of the world. But we're looking at Africa now, the peculiar challenges. Beyond what we've said so far, lack of access to rural areas, low penetration, diverse languages. What else do you see are the challenges of insurance in Africa, and how can we, navigate these complex challenges?
Thank you, Ayo. I think the major challenge in terms of insurance in Africa is the challenge of perception of the insuring public. There's a negative perception about the insurance business in Africa. So therefore, we need to improve on the level of insurance awareness, the importance of insurance to the public, and how to find a way to understand the various policies, insurance policies that are in the marketplace. There are various products more often than not, when people even take up insurance policy, they don't even bother to study the policy itself. There are basic rules. Whoever is doing the risk assessment needs to understand what kind of coverage you need to cover for a particular policy regime. In other words, when there's an extension, their policy of extension, you need to include certain policy instrument if you want your risk to be covered. So these are some of the challenge. We need more education to understand the risk. We need to understand the principle and practice of insurance. Insurance doesn't really give you profit. It brings you to where you are, where you suffer a loss.
Are we really having enough conversation at the policy level to ensure that we correct some of these ills and promote more inclusion in the insurance sector in Africa? Are we having enough policy dialogue about this?
No, the policies are there. Maybe when you talk about dialogue in terms of public education, yes, there might be issue with that area. The policies are there, but what I think more is that the insuring public should be more educated on the importance of insurance. Insurance just go beyond the one like motor insurance that most people are familiar with. The other policy, you have what they call householder. You can insure the content of your item in your house. You can insure the building against losses. You have good in-transit insurance. So there are many policy instruments that are there. But the education for people to take advantage of those policies is what is key. But the challenge is that they always assume that insurance don't pay claim. But insurance pay claim. At the point of the contract, the policy statement, there are certain things you must look out for. And where you are not covered, try to provide an extension so that you are covered eventually. So these are the conversations that we must sustain so that we can improve on the insurance policy regime across Africa.
Now let's look at some of the types of policies. You just mentioned a whole lot of them, but there are others too, like life assurance. And we know that aside education, because we have some educated people, when you talk to them about taking up such insurance, some of them would want to think that perhaps you're suggesting that something will happen to their life soon, and giving the strong attachment that a lot of Africans have to religion and to religious belief, and wanting to think that, oh, the best person who can assure your life is God. There is no doubt about that. But how do we break that barrier that religious beliefs poses to the acceptance of some insurance policies?
I think I spoke to that earlier. It has to do with perception. So we need more education to let people know that insurance is beneficial. And you just spoke to life as one of the aspects of insurance. So you have various policies even within the life regime. You can do insure your life for a period of time. Then there's what you call annuity over time. Some of the things that you'll benefit. You have education plan. You equally have investment plan within the life insurance scheme. So these schemes are there, but the public perception about insurance not paying claim has been the bane of that industry. Therefore, for us to improve on that initiative, there's a need for us to improve on the level of education between the insurer and the insured public.
All right, we have standing by via Zoom Timothy Folon-Shomomo, who is the branch manager at Eco Insurance. Good morning, Timothy. Good morning. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Okay, yeah, good morning. So good to have you join us. Yes, we are talking about the peculiar challenges of insurance practice in Africa. And one key challenge that we have identified is low penetration of insurance. I'd like you to start with that. What can we do essentially to promote or increase participation or uptake of insurance policy in Africa?
Thank you very much, my presenter. insurance, basically, as we know, that the future is the future of our future really, generally is in a state of uncertainty. Let me that word. And because of that, insurance is a necessity for virtually everybody, both poor and rich. But the irony is the fact that the level of penetration today is very, very low. And one of the reasons for that is one, cultural diversity, religion, and even insurance itself, lack of marketing and penetration vis-a-vis education, what have you. So the way out, one, we need to intensify in training. For example, we can incorporate insurance in from primary school curriculum, even to university as the case may be, so that from the early age, the children have the awareness of insurance. Many of the children you ask them what insurance, some of them are insurance, I'm not good there, because they have a negative impression about insurance. So one of the first things we need to do is to educate right from the you catch them young. So you can incorporate insurance even from the primary school level, that they will start awareness. That's number one. Number two, that you need for aggressive marketing. This will be even be our regulator also has the role to play in terms of intensifying effort to ensure that even from the rural area, what have you, we need to intensify awareness in that line. Again, technology is also another area we can also use to penetrate. Today, barely everybody is having the mobile phone in their hand. So we can actually tailor a product where even everybody will actually use their mobile app to access insurance and probably look at the product offering and take decision in that way. So basically, I said, with all this innovation coming to play, we can actually penetrate the industry gradually. In as much as before now, those challenges are there, but I can tell you that in the recent time, the awareness is coming out gradually. That we need to intensify more effort because we've not arrived yet. That we believe can still do better. Thank you.
Okay, in regions that are underserved and where you have very low financial inclusion, maybe in the rural areas, what is the success of the insurance companies in covering those areas? And also knowing that those areas are predominantly agricultural economies. You have agricultural economies in those areas. So what innovative solutions have insurance companies come up with to serve such areas?
Beautiful. You know, that has said everybody needs insurance. Even though we have the large number of the poor and low income earners are all dwelling in the local area. So basically, one of the areas we are looking at to tailor is the microfinance, such that with low small income, you can actually take insurance products. For example, we develop products like insurance, as I said, like insurance, as low as insurance, agricultural products, so that going by the climate change, we know that most of those agricultural economy are being impacted negatively by low production. Some of them maybe by virtue of by what we call it, the pests and what have you destroyed their property. So there is we have a microfinance insurance that can actually offer them a low product that can actually cover their farm, cover their product, cover even their instruments they are using. Can also cover, you have a product that can actually help them to maybe take care of their their farmland and other areas that they be up to. I said, basically, the essence of the microfinance was to make the premium very cheap. You just pay a token, and in case of any eventuality, those areas of their need to be taken care of and bring them to the position where they are before the event happen. So we had different products in that low ebb that made them to be able to access insurance. So that's one of the things I can actually say for now. Thank you.
Okay, now let's look at the area of communicating insurance to all these underserved areas in Africa. We know that language is a barrier. There are thousands of languages, and then you as an insurance practitioner, you still need to communicate to them. How do you as an insurance practitioner ensure that you take care of these language variabilities within the African ecosystem? How are you addressing communication challenge to market insurance?
Well, as you know, African home is, we have thousands of languages in Africa, as you actually said. And because of that diversity, it's a bigger challenge for us as insurance personnel. Like communication requires using languages that people understand and feel comfortable with the using and with it. Using the wrong language could also lead to misunderstanding. So one of the areas we can certainly look at again is to probably uh, go down to their community, using their effort, community effort, being cooperative, and probably the chief, their leaders there. We can organize a kind of a forum whereby there can be interpretation of whatever we are bringing to play in that wise. So we go down to send our product down to them via their languages. I said, can go through the cooperative in that sector, and go through the community leaders. You can also communicate via the agents within the sector. We have the strong agents who actually have been trained in that end. These are different languages to interpret the insurance product to them. So these are how the area we are trying to do. Then again, technology is also another area we are trying to look into to assess the local people. As I said, as far as we know that language is a serious barrier, but yet we are coming up with different innovations to actually assess those local areas and language those barriers. Thank you.
On a final note, what are the insurance policies that have recorded low sales in direct, and how can the prospect of those types of insurance be enhanced?
Well, okay, we're asking about some of the insurance that have those, like life insurance, for example. A lot of people, because of the cultural diversity, religions, some people find it difficult to insure themselves. When we say, we are now like Nigeria, for example, we believe more in praying. That it's either making a risk management in place. They believe that prayer can solve it. So one of the areas we are lacking is more of life insurance, for example. An average person don't want to take that. Say, God is my insurance. So then also another area I look at that people don't go into, apart from life insurance, even motor also is growing gradually now, but not everybody actually insure that. People then insure them with third party, which is just the normal regulatory requirement. So
thank you very much, sir.
The way, okay.
Thank you very much, sir. We do appreciate your coming on the show. We're out of time for this segment, and that has been Timothy Folorunso Momo, the branch manager, Ayuko Insurance. Okay, we'll take a very short break now and get some business nuggets from Austin. Okay, then when we are back, we look at today is the International Day for the remembrance of victims of terrorism across the world. We'll look at issues around it, and Sam will still be with us in the studios to take a look at that. Please don't go anywhere.
Leadership is basically built on trust. Trust is the currency of brand, and the leader's brand is what attracts people to him to be inspired by it. Trust is the currency of brand, and the leader's brand is what attracts people to him to be inspired by it. And that trust is built on three key pillars. And the first one is basically being your true authentic self, or your credibility. And the Greeks call that your ethos. The second one is the rigor of your logic, the soundness of your discourse. And that's the Greeks called logos. And the third one is your empathy. And that empathy degree is called pathos. As a leader, people see and sense from you your distraction towards them. And think about the person that you visit your most distraction to, be it your spouse, be it your colleague, your staff. The one that you visit the most distraction to is one that you most withhold your empathy, and they can feel it. Think about it. Somebody sitting in front of you and interviewing for a job, and they keep looking at their phone. How likely are you to give them that job? Probably not. But you display that all the time to people that look up to you, and you wonder why they don't see you as an effective leader. The other one, being the rigor of logic, is a bit easier to tackle because throughout life we are always on learning and relearning. And the best thing to do to stay current, apart from having your deep area of specialization, is to have what we call an inch deep and mile wide knowledge of a whole plethora of things, wide variety of things you learn about that makes you connected to people on various levels and increases your network. I think the other one, which is the credibility, is the one that we most flaunt. And that is the one that has got to do with being your true authentic self. And you find a lot of people, especially on social media, are trying to portray what they are not. They are trying to fake it. And it comes across very quickly when you are not being your true authentic self. And people pick it up and they don't trust you. If they don't trust you, they don't look up to you as a leader. Leadership is important. It is true leadership that we can nurture people to become future leaders. But we have to do it right. We have to earn it.
In this time and age, countries are collaborating to combat a major threat to peace that involves using violence or threat to instill fear for political, religious, or social reasons. Terrorism hurts the economy, government, and people of diverse groups. According to the 10th edition of the Global Terrorism Index (GTI), the world records about 66,000 terrorist attacks between January 2007 and December 2022. In Nigeria, it started with groups like Boko Haram in the early 2000s and has caused violent attacks and kidnappings, along with other problems like fights between herders and farmers. Experts say the 10 countries most affected by terrorism saw decreased GDP growth rates between 0.5% and 0.8%. This shows the extent at which the act destroys the economy and promotes wasteful spending. Its negative impact reaches financial markets, insurance, tourism, people resenting other cultures or businesses from other countries, and sometimes leaving government with no option than giving strict orders. This is obviously not a palatable situation, and to fight this cause, everyone needs to be a part. Discouraging people from joining these groups and taking actions which include gathering intelligence, using law enforcement, working with other countries and communities, as well as responsible reporting by the media without promoting terrorism. While this is beyond individuals, religious groups are enjoined to encourage peaceful beliefs and promote interfaith deliberations. As outlined in the Nigerian Terrorism Prevention Act of 2011, the government must also develop rehabilitation and reintegration programs for individuals with connections to terrorism. Fighting terrorism is a long-term task, hence we must continue to create awareness and take collaborative measures if we want to create a more peaceful and prosperous world. Israel Adeyemi, Sukne.
Apologies for the interruptions. We just watched the report done by Israel Adeyemi on the menace of terrorism. That brings us to our next line of discussion, which is on the International Day of Remembrance and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism, which is today. Now, the world has been talking more about terrorism since the incident of 9/11, which took place in America, where there were terror attacks on the World Trade Center in the United States of America, and several lives were lost in that incident. Now, thinking that was the only that could happen in the world, we began to see it also happen in Nigeria, with the Boko Haram erupting and disrupting peace in certain parts of Nigeria. The world has suffered a great deal to the hands of terrorists. Economics have suffered, people have been displaced, families have been displaced, and the effects are so much. We have people who are still living with the trauma that they've suffered, having been exposed to one terror attack or the other. And so this day brings to the fore the difficulties that these people go through. And it brings to the fore as well the damage that terrorists have caused in global economies. And so on a day like this, the memorial service is held to pay tribute to lives that have been lost, and you will find sometimes a minute silence observed in honor of the departed and soldiers who have lost their lives combating terror in the line of duty. And there are other ceremonial activities that do take place on this day. But beyond the ceremonies, what are global leaders, heads of states, heads of government doing to ensure that terrorism is curbed, at least to the barest, all over the world? Sam Oruje, who is Director, Research Policy and Development, Femi Wash Limited, is in the studio to take a look at it with us this morning. Looking at International Day of Remembrance and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism, I mentioned that the world has suffered a great deal when it comes to the activities of terrorists. How do we nip this in the bud?
Thank you very much indeed. In 2017, the United Nations, in remembrance of those who are victims of terrorism, the Global Counterterrorism Unit of the United Nations, with the General Assembly, passed a resolution called 72165, with a view to finding a way to remember those who have suffered from attack of terrorists, and those who are survivors want to create a solidarity and bring into the public focus on the way that we should tackle global terrorism. So today is a day set aside, and this year theme is called Legacy, Building Hope for a Peaceful Future. So this day highlights world all over to bring into focus those who suffered from terrorist attack and those who have died from terrorist attack. So the idea, one, is to bring to focus the negative impact of terrorism, to enhance civil society, to advocate for national government to bring in focus on how we can fight terrorism across the globe. So today is a sober day, and from 9/11 to the UN bombing in Baghdad, to the Lord Resistance Army in Uganda, these are very solemn days where we'll pay tribute to those who have died, particularly those who are soldiers, who then additionally civilians that have died, then again to celebrate survival of the day while they relive that bad experience, so that global terrorism can be reduced to its barest minimum.
All right, thank you for that opener. How sober can we be when we realize the fact that over 35,000 Nigerians have been killed in terror-related attacks since 2009, when Boko Haram first unleashed terror on Nigerians, and that is not according to Ayo Jimmy, but it is according to the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect. From Nigeria to Kenya, from Kenya to other parts of Africa and the world, it has been a global menace. You know, lives have been lost, fathers have gone, widows have emerged, and children have become, you know, parentless, all because of a particular belief system or some people's conviction that this is the way to go. I mean, the way of violence. We know that is not the way to go. But I do like the theme for this year, as you rightly said, legacy, building hope for a peaceful future. Beyond condemning the act of terrorism, there has to be intentionality when it comes to how do we ensure a peaceful future. People say that we should look at the motivation for terrorism. Much as there is no justification for terrorism, what do we stand to, I mean, what insight can we glean from the motivation, documented motivation for terrorism, and how can we use that to construct a peaceful future? That is my concern at this point in time.
I think the challenge is essentially based on hate ideology that is being perpetuated across the globe. Therefore, there's a need to underscore a peaceful coexistence. The hate ideology that is being spread across the globe is a major challenge. Therefore, today, when they say legacy, building hope for a peaceful future, underscore that we must pass message of peaceful coexistence. These extremist ideologies are not very good for global peace. Therefore, as individuals from every part of the corner, particularly religious leader, must find a way to preach peaceful coexistence. Peace is what we need as a member of the global community. So these ideologies of extremism are the ones that are driving terrorism. Therefore, government, on the other hand, too, must improve on good governance so that there's a better place for citizens and they're able to express themselves more meaningfully in a peaceful manner.
And there's some counter-terrorism strategies that can be employed by governments to combat terrorism.
Yes, in line with the global counter-terrorism unit of the United Nations, various nations are keying into those counter-terrorism. The government in Nigeria in particular have a unit too that is responsible to counter terrorism. To what extent are these framework helping to stop the tide of terrorism is a different question. But what is important, like I mentioned a while ago, is that we must preach peaceful coexistence. And that's the only way we can reduce this extremism that is being preached by some of these hardliners who are terrorists across the globe. So interfaith dialogue is very important. Counter-terrorism framework by national and subnational government must be strengthened so that we can reduce the impact of terrorism.
Okay. I like the idea of interfaith dialogues. And it's not new in this part of the world. We've had attempts in the past to have interfaith dialogues. To what extent is it working? And if it is not working as much as we expected it to work, what can be done to still promote, you know, interfaith dialogue? Because you said that leaders of religious sects should avoid extremism or should avoid propagating extremism. How do we further promote interfaith dialogue? That's what I...
All right. We have interfaith dialogue in Nigeria. The United Institute for Peace over the years have been promoting this kind of dialogue, particularly across various religions, with a view to reducing some of these hardline practice from religious leaders. Then in addition to that, government, on the other hand, equally has been using means, particularly the National Orientation Agency, to promote peaceful coexistence. So the message today is that we must find a way to promote peaceful coexistence, and we must sustain peaceful messages. beyond a ceremonial day like this, so that people know that extremism does not pay, and that when we live in coexistence, particularly from a peaceful point of view, then society gets better.
Let's look at de-radicalization of terrorists. That's a term that we begun to know in Nigeria as a strategy employed by the Nigerian government to tackle terrorism. When some terrorists were apprehended by the Nigerian military, and so they were detained, and then there were talks about de-radicalizing this sect of people and reintegrating them into the society. From your perspective, is that strategy workable? And what are the implications? Is it even possible to de-radicalize people that have been radicalized over time to the extent that they can carry out certain terror activities?
All right, there are a lot of argument on whether there's a need to de-radicalize terrorists, but the view is that one of the strategies of de-radicalization of terrorists is to serve as a disincentive to others who are still having those kind of ideological stand. So what is important is just one of the strategies that those who have been found should be de-radicalized in a way that it can serve as a disincentive, as a way that people don't go in that direction. There are other strategies. We talked about interfaith dialogue just a while ago. That's one of the strategies to build peace. The other peace-building initiative by civil society organization. You have various international NGOs that are working within those frameworks to be able to provide peaceful coexistence with a view to reducing the impact and find a way of serving as a deterrence for those who have been radicalized in extremist ideology, so that peace can reign. And that's why they talked about building hope for a peaceful future, which is this year's theme for the way we can find a way to, number one, pay tribute to those who have died in the process, then find a way to reach out to those who have survived, so that the traumatized way they are felt over the period, then that can be reduced again. Providing what we call psychosocial support services so that people can live more meaningful life over time.
Okay, there are two kinds of victims when there is any terror attack. Those who were directly attacked and probably lost their lives in the process, and the people they left behind who live with the pains. The man that died is dead, painfully. But there is a daily dying experience that those they left behind go through. Widows who became widows too soon, children who became orphans too soon. While we are looking at a day like this to take care of, the need of survivors, what about those left behind who suffered collateral damage, collateral psychological damage? Should we be looking in that direction as well? Because every day that passes by, they look at other people's fathers and they're like, my father could have been alive by now, but for this.
I think this celebration covers those who have lost their loved one in those process. So the idea of today is to reach out even to families of those who are victims, and the United Nations, in conjunction with friends of victims, has put this program together in a way that we can reach out to those people to sustain their human rights and find a way to reduce some of the challenges that are occurred through post-stress disorder that occur to those people who are members of family of those who have died. So we should reach out to them, and this day is to find a way to pay tribute to the lost one, and again equally find a way to show a hand of love to their friends, family members.
Having the understanding that terrorism is a global threat, in what excuse me, in what way can countries collaborate to attack this common enemy, which is terrorism?
Terrorism is a global security threat, and you have a global counter-terrorism unit of the United Nations that is working in conjunction with state parties who sign on to that. And one of the reasons is to put measures and framework in place to find a way to reduce terror attack, and equally find a way so that radical ideologies are not preached across religious line.
Okay, we must say thank you to you, Sam Orowodi, for your submissions on that particular topic. We can only pray for a peaceful future, not just for Africa, but for the rest of the world, because threats anywhere in the world will affect everywhere in the world. They say that violence anywhere in the world is a threat to peace everywhere in the world. Thank you very much, Sam, for coming on the show today. We are not done yet with this issue. We'll go on a short break now. When we come back, we will be talking about the place of national orientation in combating terrorism. Don't go anywhere. A time was in this country before 2009 when it was said that an average Nigerian will never allow himself to be used to bomb any place. They say we love our lives so much that we really can't go that far. But then, Boko Haram came and we have bombings everywhere. And it has gone worse from there till now, when we can say, okay, we are building some signs of, relief. Now, something fundamentally has shifted in our national orientation, the way I see it, and we can only address it by going back to our national orientation. It's about restoring the psyche of another Nigerian to that point where we can see we are essentially a peaceful nation. Let us not forget that our motto is peace and unity. So what is the place of national orientation in reorientating an average Nigerian to a point whereby we are truly our brother's keeper and our sister's welfare caretaker? So Idahosa Osamazi is here with us again to look at the place of national orientation in combating terrorism. It's not just about guns and cannons alone, it's about the mind. Idahosa, have I spoken right on that?
I think you have your perspective quite right on this. I don't think it was before 2009, because a lot has happened in this country, and this is the failure of successive government to engage its citizens in changing the narrative in society to be able to actually champion what people hear or what people do. And this reduced the trust level of citizens on what government were doing. If you remember, sometime in March in 1987, during the President Babangida regime, when the SAP policy was implemented, I remember Professor Jerry Garner was made to head the Ministry of Information, and he championed the MAMSA program, where, of course, the government was in the face of everybody trying to tell us why we need to cut down on what we do on ostentatious living so that we can actually save the future. Now, it was quite effective at that time, but successive governments were not able to actually sustain that program. And this is where we are today, that we are having to spend close to 7 trillion annually to fight our children.
Now, when we talk about reorientating people, in what way and in what form would the reorientation come? Is it going to come in form of subjects in schools for children to learn? Is it going to come in forms of public sensitization? Maybe messages we see on billboards so that people can see or read to know that this is the message, and what should be the content of the message?
You see, over a period of time, we actually have shifted this conversation, thinking that it will be more effective when you teach it to students. Now, one of the things that you have to reckon with in the Nigerian education system is that everybody is in school to pass, not really to grade an idea. And so, yet, people are doing civic. Almost every student in the school does civic. But how it affects their everyday life, because it's an examined course. And of course, if there is a pressure to pass exam, you really don't take in the value which this thing is supposed to present. But I think the real way of reaching to the heart of men is actually the government engaging, deploying the use of social media, which is very critical, and then try to see how we can walk our talk, which is really a problem. Because the trust deficit is why you see government medium really are not efficacious these days. Because you see government is saying something, and somebody can point you to something that is not being done well. Because the man who is speaking to you, that is telling you to do something, is seen to be doing something in the contrary. And this is the real reason why we're talking about terrorism in Nigeria today. Because number one, it seems to people that it became very lucrative. The government cannot provide food, government cannot provide work, government cannot provide basic infrastructure that will support the livelihood of a citizen. And then, of course, you have an alternative source of income coming from the terrorists. And people are asking. This money, they say you are shifting it from abroad. And if people can have so much money to fund terrorism and we cannot have money to fund good life, then you begin to ask, is government really your friend or government is your enemy? Now, of course, if you look at it, the case of the Boko Haram, it was very easy to change the psychology of the average man who was not in school. And they said the real reason why you are suffering is because education is the one that creates this imbalance. Now, when you stop education, imbalance will go. For a man who has not been to school, that is a very plausible argument. And so what we should do was actually to say, how can we talk to these people that education actually does not foil imbalance? That there are things that these people can do that actually put food on their table and they can live a life that is dignifying. So this is what is important. And I think we must get back again, not just about just communicating. Because people, you can be speaking to people and they really do not believe you. Mm-hmm. This is where we are. Because you have broken promises over and over again. And so people cannot take you serious, whatever you're trying to say to them. But I think the way to go is that government begin to live their words. So if we say this is what we're going to do, then of course, if there's a reason not to do it, then communication becomes very fundamental. If you remember the quarter 8 stages of change, yes, of course, you communicate a sense of urgency, you set up a guiding coalition, people who are going to be the champion of this conversation. You are going to enlist a lot of people. I was telling somebody this morning, you see, the town hall should not cease, for example. And I think this is when the government really need to do the town hall in engaging various stakeholders, talking to them, the policy of government, where the low-hanging fruits are, where people are going to benefit. We need to engage with people the more and see that government is actually sincere in trying to lift them out of where they are at the moment, and then, of course, reassure them that this suffering is going to be short-lived, and at a certain point in time, good is going to come. Then, of course, we will see a lot of things happening.
Now, in these town hall meetings that you have just spoken about, there is one critical stakeholder, which is the youth of a country. These are the same set of people used to fuel unrest everywhere. They are the same people that are used to fuel terrorism everywhere. Their energy is the raw materials that is used to fuel terrorism. How do we engage the youth? What kind of communication should we put before them so that we can take advantage of their energy, psychological energy and physical energy, and ensure that we tilt them away from terrorism? I mean, as we progress in this, fight against terrorism.
You see, I think one of the things that we can also do is to borrow leads from those who have lived well. I will always have to cite Lee Kuan Yew, for example. You see, when he started to see how to generate and change the third world mindset of the people of Singapore, what he did was to put structure in place to ensure that government was profitable, that working for government was profitable, and this was very great. Now, you see, one of the things that really you see with our youth, they tell you education is a scam. You spend 4 years in the university and you become a driver for somebody who has never been in school. So, there's no value, there's no dignity in hard work. Now, we must be able to demonstrate this. You see, take for example, Baby Naija is on, and you can think about how much money that the people who contested are going to take away. And yet you have a child who had excelled in education with 4 straight A, and all government can partly give to you maybe 200,000. So there's no motivation that is coming, that people know that, look, if I do something good, something valuable, I am going to be compensated. This is where the real orientation is, that we begin to celebrate people who do the right thing. Give them the right motivation and incentive. You see, there was a conversation on social media recently that a certain young girl who got broke the record in lasso, was rewarded Patrick compared to the one who did cooking. Had the whole state were gathering around. Now, how do you convince that young man that going to school will be of something valuable to you? When I was growing up as a young child and I was talking to some of people younger than me in my community then, I said, please come go to school. They will usually tell me, I said, look, but people who go to school, they don't have money. Look at this man. He didn't go to school, he's a millionaire. This one doesn't go to school, he's a millionaire. See, this is the disincentive to living valuable life in our environment. And I think we must deliberately also bring to the fore why we are communicating this value and see what privilege that comes with good value.
Let's also look at the aspect of the clubs that we have in schools and in societies. There seems to be some form of infiltration that whilst those clubs, some of them were set up to bring people together and have them, groom them with certain ideologies, maybe the ideologies that they're being groomed on, that over time they change. And we also have foreign influence, because terrorism is not a one area thing. There seems to be a mechanism put in place where you have the influence and sponsorship from other persons. So checking these clubs that we have and checking the sponsorship that comes from them, what should be the approach and how can government nationally achieve that?
Well, while we speak about foreign influence, you see, you have to talk about the foundation, the fundamental issues on ground that fuels this influence, that makes them look as if they are real. You see, now when you live in a nation where we are so polarized, based on where you come from, I had to answer my son a question to speak to the national unity while they were still very young. The question was, why will I score 160 in a over 200 exam and I don't get admitted, and somebody scored 18 and he come into the same school? How do you explain that to a child? It's difficult. And this is because we have abused the process of the federal character that speaks to representation. And I don't think that the principle of the federal character actually wanted us as a people to begin to promote mediocrity. So the federal character principle is actually to see that, of course, there's a national spread in terms of getting people in. But I think where the thing has gone wrong is the fact that we have just deliberately accepted that some people can never do well, and therefore we must lower the bar for them to catch up. This is where the problem is. And this is where the state governors are very critical stakeholders in these conversations. I like what Erufai did in Kaduna. He personally wrote to JAMB and said, don't give us low mark, because our children will compete in the global space. If the cutoff point is 200, let it be 200 across board for people in Kaduna State. We don't want them, somebody who does not score up to 100, get into school. Because when we go to the job market, we're not going to be saying whether this man is from Kaduna State, because we're in a global world. And I think if all the governors embrace this kind of a policy to allow that children become competitive, then of course you will be able to douse the tension of marginalization, which people claim that you are certainly trying to suppress a particular tribe in favor of another. So it looked real in the public space. Now the government had to be very, very deliberate in terms of proffering policy options that says that, look, we don't marginalize, this is what we're doing, and this is a balance we want to create. Yes, we know some certain people may not get to this place, but then they must get to a certain threshold for getting some promotion. I think this is the real issue. So suspicion in society is what is fueling this terrorism that we talk about today.
Okay, let's look at community engagements. Now, if the government takes care of policy issues that can address this suspicion and ensure that there is equitable representation based on merit, not on mediocrity, granted, what is the role of community leaders in, reshaping the minds of the members of the community and say, okay, let's think like Nigerians, not like Yorubas pretending to be Nigerians or Igbo pretending to be Nigerians. We have to speak like we are Nigerians without ethnicity, and that starts from the community level. What should the leaders of communities do to ensure that this is propagated going forward?
I think that's the most challenging part of it. And you see, modernism or modernity are the way of eroding the sacred role of tradition somehow in society. That you see, the state governors, the local government people are also infiltrating these institutions that are supposed to have been traditional to society. But I think what we should really do is that we're also seeing a lot of even traditional rulers without values. There are cases, of course, you have seen some traditional rulers who are actually fueling these issues because they are also looking for relevance. And what is this relevance? Because they say when money speak, bullshit have its way. So this is the real issue. Everybody wants access to money. Now, these traditional institutions, they can't collect tax, for example, like it used to be, where people pay royalty to them, and they're able to live a certain kind of life, and they want to remain relevant in the scheme of things because we have not abolished it. Is he the traditional ruler, for example? Is he a chief? But there's no support structure from the system that comes to him. So he's trying to support himself and make himself relevant in his locale. And then some of them are forming themselves into a gang, and they actually fueling these terrorists. And of course, this is the issue where you talk about sponsorship. Now, those who are bringing the money come into those institutions because states are not taking care of them. But if they see somebody who brings in money to them, they are willing to open their door and allow whatever it is to just go under the carpet like that. This is a problem.
Now, as we wrap up, now, how do we discourage participation? Because some names some time ago were released as being sponsors of terrorism. Role modeling, we know, is one thing that happens. The reason why some persons want to go into entertainment because you've seen that some entertainers are successful. Now, when people see wealth or people living in affluence, they don't know how the money comes into come to them. But when people who are investigated or named as sponsors of terrorism are persecuted, would they not serve as deterrents to others who want to get into that line of business?
You know, there's what they call a fraud triangle. Now, in the first angle, what you have is that people have pressure. On the second angle, you have opportunities. And on the third angle, you have what they call rationalization. Now, if I am under pressure and I need some fund, and of course, there's an opportunity for me to gain access to get that fund, and then I can rationalize it that if I have this fund, now the consequence that is coming may not be as, compared with what I'm gaining, then I can take a decision and say, well, if I make 20 billion and they are giving me 2 months in jail, when I'll come and spend the remaining of the money. So that is a fantastic rationalization. And this is where the real challenge is. That if you have to fight alligator in the swamp, what you need to do is to drain the swamp rather than jump into this thing to fight people. So what we have to first of all do is to see what are the rationalization points that people see that encourages them to do this practice. Now, if you demonstrate with one big fish, and people can see that, look, if this man could not escape the consequence of the law, and it's so strict and severe, people will not rationalize crime. But as long as the consequences are mild and they are not as serious and significant as they should be, of course, it will continue to serve as a motivation for people to continue to do things that are not right.
All right, Dausa or Samanze, once again, the fraud triangle. Let's just say this. There is no justifiable rationalization for going into terrorism. At every point in time, there are always better alternatives. Maybe you're not looking closely enough, or you're not, allowing yourself speak truth to yourself. But until we get to that point when all of us can tell ourselves the truth we need to hear and practice it, we're going nowhere as a people. And that is how I like to wrap on today's show. Thank you very much for being part of it from 7 a.m. up till this point. Let's not forget that Business Insight comes right after this program. We're not going yet. My name is Ayo Jimmy. Blessing.
Yeah, I like to say collectively we must disincentivize all acts of terrorism, because in one way or the other, they make the world unlivable for you and I. So to encourage development, let's do our bit. Those who we can talk to and send the right message for peaceful coexistence, then of course we must lend our voices to it. I am Blessing AJ. As I has told you, Business Insight is up at 10 o'clock. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow at 7 a.m. West African time.